However, there is a second category of indirect capture DR, and that is the thin film transistor, TFT.
Indirect direct DR, right?
This is indirect direct radiography. Indirect DR. Indirect
So
DR.
does this mean that there's a method to do it with TFT and there's a method to do it with the other one that we did?
CCD/C?
Straight up on a crowd.
Yes, there's a difference. Because if you take a look here, what does the TFT method use? We have
Photo
an X-ray scintillator. Does that look familiar?
the same thing.
Yes, we talked about that. We have a photodiode. Does that look familiar?
Not with this one.
No. We have a TFT. Does that look familiar?
No.
Well, it's in an array. Does array look familiar?
Yes.
All right, at least we know what an array is. Good. So as you can see, there are some big differences between the CCD CMOS method and the TFT method. So let's take a look. X-rays interact with the scintillator. The
That's
scintillator
right.
does its job, turns the X-rays into light. The light goes to the photodiode. The photodiode turns that into an electrical signal. That signal then goes to the TFT array, which stores that in a capacitor. When ready, the signal from the capacitor is then sent to the ADC, which then turns it into a digital signal that then goes to a computer. So the process is different. There are some things that look familiar. There should be some echoes of the previous one, but there are big differences as well. So, first things first, let's talk about a photodiode. What is a photodiode? And I do apologize because we are covering the topic of diode a bit early. You will be covering this once again with Miss Bonilla in chapter 4 in radiation physics. So this is your sneak peek into diodes. A diode is a valve for electricity. So let's think about water for a second. Let's think about pipes. Let's say that you have a sewage pipe.
Lovely.
Okay? Do you want the stuff inside that sewage pipe to be able to flow in both directions?
No.
Why not?
We don't want to see it back to us.
Right, you don't want it to come back to us. It would stink. I agree. So how do you make sure it keeps only going in one direction?
Put a valve there,
Valves.
sir.
A valve. What does a valve do?
It blocks it one direction.
It goes in one direction.
Good. So does it flow in one direction? If it tries to go the other way, it blocks it. Makes sense, right? That way the sewage can only flow out. It doesn't flow back. Okay. Your body has valves.
Heart.
Right? Your heart has valves. That way the blood only goes in one direction, right? The blood doesn't go backwards. And so in electricity, we also have valves. And these valves are called diodes. So diodes only let electricity flow in one direction. So, anyone familiar with that band AC/DC?
Yes, sir.
Yes? At least some people have heard of it maybe?
ACDC.
What's that little symbol in between the AC and the DC?
Slash.
Yeah, it's like a lightning bolt slash thing, right? So what is AC and what is DC?
Direct current and alternative current.
Direct current and alternating current. Those are some fancy words. What does that mean? Good question. Okay, so let's all right, story time, right? Story time. So let's jump all the way back to the 1800s. Thomas Edison has just invented a light bulb. He is installing light bulbs in New York City, right? And he has a brand new company called the Edison Power Company or Edison Electric Company, something like that. But he's trying to market these light bulbs to light up the night. And so he needs a way to get electricity to the light bulbs. And his method is through the use of direct current. Basically, he sends electricity only in one direction. Electricity flows this way, powers on the lights, and then comes back. So it makes this giant loop like this. That is how the electricity flows, only one way. Direct current. Problem? It doesn't go very far, right? You push it, and eventually it's hard to push it any further, right? Just like if you're trying to push something a long distance, it's hard to push something a long distance. Okay, so that was the issue with direct current. He needed stations like every several blocks just to keep the electricity flowing forwards. Along comes a competitor. They market something called alternating current. Electricity doesn't just flow one direction anymore. Electricity goes one way for 1 second and then the other way the next second. It goes back and forth. It wiggles, right? It just wiggles back and forth like this. But because all it's doing is wiggling, it has a much easier time traveling long distances. And so you don't need a power station every 3 blocks. You can cover a whole city like this. And so AC wins out. Edison's DC falls out of favor, and AC rules the day. So electricity nowadays, when it comes out of the plug, is doing this. It just wiggles back and forth.
So by wiggling, it's gaining energy set to move forward.
No, it's not going forwards. It's going forwards and then backwards, and then forwards and then backwards. It's wiggling. Okay. However, many of your appliances, right? For example, cell phone chargers, computers, they require electricity to only go one direction. They still require direct current. Things that run off batteries use direct current. Batteries push things only in one direction. But it's close by, right? So that's fine. It's not going a long distance. So how on earth do we take the wiggling current in our plugs and turn it into direct current that is usable by your devices? Well, if you think about it, how do you plug your device into the wall?
With a plug.
Can you plug it in just directly? All right, who's got their charging cable on them?
Like that.
Who has a charging cable? No. All right, show me your charging cable. All right, you've got a charging cable. What's on the end of this? A fuse.
An adapter.
This is an adapter. What is it adapting?
The current.
USB.
Part of its job is to turn that alternating current into a direct current so that your phone can properly use the electricity. And how do we do it? The same way we keep sewage from flowing backwards. A diode. So you are using diodes every day without knowing it. Diodes are valves that keep electricity flowing only in one direction. Now, that was a lot of words to come back to this topic. Why do we need a diode? Because we want our electric signal to go in one direction, towards the computer. And so what is happening here is we have a photodiode. Light comes in. Light creates an electric current, an electric flow. And the diode makes sure that the electric current is only going to go one way, forwards towards the rest of our TFT. So light is converted into electrons, and the electrons can only go in one direction, towards the TFT. Now, we'll talk about what a TFT is in just a moment, but one more thing to know about the photodiode. What is it made out of? Amorphous silicon. Amorphous silicon. ASI. Amorphous silicon. What is the scintillator made out of? Cesium iodide. Good. What is the phosphor layer of a PSP in CR made out of?
European activated.
Yes, that. Okay, well, all of you got it together. That was good. So yes, europium activated barium fluorohalide. Good.
European activated barium flow.
Yes,
Yeah, so make sure you do know these materials.
Because
They are in your flashcards as well, so hopefully that will help.
so we will have multiple choice,
No.
right? So we let
It's fill in the blank now.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. Just
So-
because of that.
Let's talk about a thin film transistor. Alright, so this is a transistor is just a small device that can act as a switch and an amplifier for an electric signal. So in this case, we're going to boost our electric signal a bit, and we're going to store it in a capacitor. A capacitor is basically like a tiny battery. And that capacitor is going to store our charge until we are ready to get the information. And then all of it comes out at one time. Okay. So, got a lot of fancy words here. Don't need to worry too much about all the fancy words. Main thing to note here is that this stuff is basically burnt into a pane of glass. A very fancy pane of glass.
Pain?
Like sheet,
P-A-N-E.
a sheet of glass.
Okay.
window pane.
Like a window pane. So you've got these transistors. These transistors are located on this sheet of glass. And these are arranged into these tiny squares, laid out into arrays. Okay? So once again, that's where the array part of TFT array comes in. So the thin film transistor, the transistor is this tiny square. It's laid out into a grid, into an array. And each individual square, each individual detector of our TFT is called a detector element, a DEL, a DEL. Okay? So our DELs are the individual parts of the TFT array. If we were to use an analogy, the DELs are like a pixel. The TFT array is like our image matrix. Right? So the DELs make, so a pixel makes up the image matrix, right? The DELs make up the TFT array. The exact same thing. And in fact, this analogy goes even further because each DEL is responsible for one pixel. So these DELs are physically representing your pixels. Okay?
The square.
So if you see a pixel on the image, that pixel had a DEL somewhere in the TFT array.
So if you really go squares of the TFT, that would be the dells
Yes. So the small square here is the DEL
of the TFT.
of the TFT array. You find TFTs everywhere, not just in X-ray equipment, right? You find TFTs in like flat panel monitors. You have TFTs there. Also tells you why the IRs are so fragile, right? You drop that, you shatter the pane of the glass inside, right? You've got to buy a new IR.
So is it that green thing that is usually there? So
What green thing?
is it like it's green color, the glass thing?
Green color? No. You can't see it. You can't see it. It's inside. So it's not right. It's not this thing. This is CR. It's the very fancy thing that you get to carry around. Right? If you do portables, right? It's that fancy thing that you take and you put under the patient. Right? If you drop that, how much do you owe the hospital?
80,000.
That's right, $80,000. That's right. You'll be working for free for like 2.5 years.
Oh, the MIA.
Okay, I'm kidding. You have insurance for that.
Okay.
But the idea stands, right? They're fragile. Handle them gently. Be nice to them. Okay, so TFT array. The signal comes in from the photodiode. That signal is stored inside the DEL with the capacitor. Right? And so the DEL is the individual square.
So this slide doesn't say anything about a capacitor.
Capacitor.
We have it because I was just wondering because I'm not right.
Here's your capacitor, right?
I see.
So let's talk a little bit more about the anatomy of a DEL. DELs, right, the small individual units, right, basically the pixel of your TFT array. the del is not entirely there to capture the signal. So part of the del can capture the signal, but not all of the del can capture the signal. So you have an active region and an inactive region. The active part is what can capture the signal. The inactive part cannot. The inactive part will hold everything else used to support the active area. So that's where your capacitor is going to be. That's where the rest of your electronics are going to be, right? So the active area here is going to detect X-rays. Everything else here is going to support it in its job to detect X-rays. Yes?
You said the indirect cannot hold the captive signal, but will hold everything else.
The inactive region. So the inactive region
Yeah,
does
that's what
not
I'm
detect X-rays.
Okay, gotcha.
It holds everything else.
Okay.
It's got the electronics. It's got the capacitors. It's got wiring. All of that is in the inactive region.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So you've got active region that detects X-rays, inactive which does not. Right, makes sense, right? Active is doing stuff, inactive isn't doing the stuff.
So light gray is inactive there and the black is the active one, sir?
Correct, so in this first square here, the light gray is the
The
inactive,
dead zone is
the
there.
dead zone, and the black part is your active area. The size of this del, the size of this entire square, active plus inactive, that will determine your spatial resolution. Because like I said earlier, this is basically your pixel. The smaller the del, the smaller your pixel, the better your spatial resolution. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Right, so it's nothing to do with active area versus inactive area here. It's all about the size of the whole thing.
Do they have the same formula as 2n?
Same formula as what?
2n.
2n?
For pixel we had that too. Number of pixels.
No, the only formula
That's
you had
bit
for
depth.
pixels was bit depth, was the color. Well, you also had the formula with the image matrix and field of view.
Wait, can you go over the
So
active
2n was not the size of
Mhm.
No, what happens to
Where n is
So
the
the
number.
active region is the part of your T of
Where n
T
is the number.
that can detect X-rays.
Yeah.
This inactive will not detect any X-rays. Even if X-rays hit this, it will not realize it. The inactive region is there to house all the support stuff. It's there to house the capacitors. It's there to house the wiring. Right? The wires need to go from the TFT to the computer. Right? It needs to be able to send information to the computer. So the wires there, right, are located here in that inactive area.
So the inactive is the half square. Everything else except the X-rays.
We're not even
So for
halfway in
test
part
purposes,
one
what do
yet,
you
that's what I'm saying.
interested
No, dog.
What should you be interested in? So, for example, if I ask you the definitions,
What I'm saying.
like where would you find the capacitor in a TFT? And your answers were, oh yeah, the capacitor's in the photodiode, the capacitor's in the active area, the capacitor's in the inactive area, or the capacitor is in the scintillator. You would say the capacitor is where? Inactive area. If I was going to ask you what part of the TFT is able to detect X-rays, then you would tell me what?
Active area.
Active region, active area. Very good. Okay. But we can do a little bit more with this as well.
No.
Because we have this concept called fill fraction.
You've been learning something new like every
You
5
say this
minutes.
is ridiculous, but keep in mind, right?
Somebody
We're
came
only,
up with this
we
shit.
split this chapter in half. Your seniors actually did all of chapter 10 at one time.
They deserve it.
No.
They just
So where does the half finish then?
This is like his finger.
wherever this part begins.
Or
So
that,
find
Crazy
out.
like
that
green.
is actually.
So
No.
we need to talk about fill fraction. And yes, you do need to know fill fraction. Yes, I have seen these questions on the registry. So we have del. So actually, no, not when I took it, because back when I took it, we didn't have digital, it was film screen. So we had to answer questions about what chemicals were in the fixer, what chemicals were in the processor, how long you should stay in the dryer, what temperature should be, what would happen if you got some developer accidentally into the fixer, things like that.
Back in my day.
So, do you like memorizing names like gadolinium oxysulfide and cesium iodide?
No.
What did you call me?
Nobody don't like gadolinium
Field
oxide.
fraction, come on now, like, come on now, really.
Mr. Bond?
It is what it is, I'm sorry.
Mm.
Yes, Jay.
So this is all still relatively, we're still changing the way that we
I mean, it's been like this for a decade.
It's been like this for a decade?
Yeah.
How long was film screen around?
Film screen is what we used in Jenkins, basically.
Okay, so a couple, well, okay.
Okay.
Monty said they need to pick one, CR or DR. Why? Why are you doing both?
Well, in the future,
Shout out Harris Health.
everyone moves away from CR to DR, then they may not need to learn about DR or CR anymore. They may be able to focus exclusively on
We
DR.
finna start that right
By
now.
that time, they're gonna have,
But
Right
by
They're
that
gonna have
time, you'll be
holograms by the
all
time.
working text, and then you'll be talking to the students, and you'll be like, well, back in my day.
We studied about CR.
we're gonna have
Mr. Phung
holograms.
taught us about film screen, CR, and DR.
Like that?
We have to know everything. I don't know what you guys are doing nowadays. I don't know why you're complaining about DR.
And Mr. Phung, he's gonna be like, here, read the book, y'all.
Yeah.
Not going through this
Okay.
number. I refuse.
But let's focus.
You need a new mission.
Let's try to get through the rest of
Keep
this
the class for like 5
so
minutes.
that on Friday we can start fresh with direct DR.
No, wait a minute.
So, fill fraction. Fill fraction is very straightforward.
Yeah. Oh,
If this is the area of your dell, what percentage of the dell is the active region?
What's it?
The light blue, right? How do you find a percentage?
This over the whole multiplied by 100.
Right. Over the whole, right? So you just find the light blue divided by the total area, and that's your fill fraction. That's all you have to do. So, what is this total area? Well, it's active plus inactive, right? The whole thing is active plus inactive, right? Light blue plus dark blue, that's the whole size of your dell. So that's how you find your dell area.
Okay.
And then you just say, okay, find my active area, divide by the total, and that's my fill fraction.
Okay.
That's all you have to do. Very straightforward.
But didn't you say percentage, sir? So if you say percentage 1,
So in this
multiply by
case,
100?
we're gonna leave it as a decimal.
Wouldn't you just take the total and
Wait.
subtract the
We'll leave it as a decimal.
I see.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't you just take the total and subtract the average?
That wouldn't give you the percentage.
But it would give you.
It would give you something. Right? But it's hard to compare that something to other somethings if the somethings are different sizes.
Oh, sir, I didn't know this, that if you leave it as the decimal, it's yet a percentage.
Right, so instead of doing divide by,
Multiply by 100.
exactly, that's right.
Oh, I see.
Just leave it
Then
as a
you're
decimal.
removing the percentage. We're removing the decimals. Oh, I see.
Leave it as a decimal, don't put the percentage.
I see.
So, let's try one here. Let's try one here. Okay, what is the total size of the dell here?
1 millimeter square.
1 millimeter square, right? So 1. What is the size of our active area?
175.
0.75. So, our active area is 0.75. The whole thing is 1. What percentage is being used by the active area? 0.75 divided by 1
It's 0.75.
is 0.75, right?
Well, I thought you just keep it as, you don't keep it in the fraction.
So, you just do this divided by that, and then you leave it as a decimal.
But it's called fraction, I thought you leave it in the fraction, I thought that was the whole point.
No, so in this case, fraction means part. So what part of the area is your active area? Like I said, I know, names can be confusing. Unfortunately, we just have to live with it. By the way, fair warning, if you do join me in MRI, you will get a lot more weird names.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah.
these names are throwing you off. Be careful about MRI. Because we talk about flare and stir and grass and fiesta. Stir, stir,
So
flare,
it'll be
grass,
like
fiesta.
after area, 0.6.
Fiesta.
So whatever you do.
All I heard was fiesta, so.
That's right, it's party.
It's a party.
That's
Right,
all
let's
you
try another one.
wasted.
Yes.
I wanna
Okay.
get chocolate wasted.
So that was
Alcohol.
one by one.
Can I borrow your water?
Active area is 0.5 by 0.5.
Okay.
What is the fill fraction?
Active.
So first, we need to find the area. So what? If the length is 1 and the width is 1, what is the area? 1. 1 times 1, good. If the length is 0.5 and the width is 0.5, what is the area? 0.25, good. Just multiply. And that's, so your active area is 0.25, just like you said. Total area is 1, just like you said. You divide them, and that's your fill fraction. All right, I think we have, nope, that's it.
So do you have to
All right, that's it. Good job. You guys did it.